I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a lot of great stories for you tonight, and we have an in-depth coverage of the ballot box arson from this morning. But we're going to start with a story that's more than a year in the making. Portland's second mass camping site is opening soon, and as it happens, neighbors not that thrilled. Who would have guessed? It's our big story tonight. This latest site is in North Portland, and it's different from the first mass camp in Southeast in a key way. The new one includes RV parking alongside the tiny homes. But the location of this site irritates both neighbors and homeless advocates for different reasons. Blair Best explains.
It's been 1 year in the making.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Off North Portland Road is the city's second mass-sanctioned shelter site.
It's the first combined RV and outdoor alternative shelter site within the city of Portland, but it probably won't be the last.
That announcement met with protesters Monday afternoon.
Because I think this is a really inhumane place to house homeless people.
This is a death trap, and it shouldn't be.
We also continue to work with the neighborhood to find the best ways to problem solve.
The California-based group Urban Alchemy will run the site.
We want to say thank you. We're excited about this site. We're excited about the lives that will be changed.
It can house nearly 200 people, including 90 tiny homes and 70 parking spots for RVs. Roughly 20% of those on the streets in Multnomah County live in a vehicle, according to a recent point-in-time count.
This site provides an opportunity for us to get RVs and derelict vehicles off our streets and out of Portland neighborhoods.
The site is low barrier, which means no background checks and no requirement to be sober.
Yeah, that's probably what worries me the most.
Michael has lived in St. John's for 20 years. It's the surrounding neighborhood that's giving mixed reviews about the site.
Yeah, just bringing people unchecked into your neighborhood is always kind of a frightening thing.
Oh, it's good to know that the homeless are actually going to be able to get into a shelter.
Ted could have made a better choice for a site. He could have used the money in a better way.
And she has a point. The site, once used for boat manufacturing, sits between a wastewater treatment plant and the Columbia Slough. Here's what it looked like last year. The city had to remove trash and debris, including more than 3,000 tires from the property, all while not disturbing the soil, which was being tested for toxins, ultimately delaying shelter construction.
It has not been easy. It's been no small feat, but it's been incredibly rewarding and worthwhile.
About 3 minutes down the road from the site is this homeless camp where about a dozen people live in these RVs and other vehicles. And the fact that this camp is so close to the site, turns out, is not a coincidence.
That's why we stayed right here on Portland Road.
Originally from Colorado, Matt has been homeless in Portland for 9 years.
And I moved up here because I heard it was a little bit more homeless friendly.
Despite the rumors, he couldn't find a shelter that accepted his trailer until now.
I'm going to go down there right this moment and see if they're going to let us in.
Blair joins me now from outside the site. Blair, what about security? Clearly neighbors are having issues with the site opening.
Pat, staff will be on site 24/7. They'll also be connecting with people camping in the area to try to move them into the site. While it is low barrier, we're told no drugs or weapons will be allowed inside. But another big concern for neighbors is really the location itself. We are so far away from any inner city services. We're surrounded by industrial businesses, and not to mention a really busy road where big trucks go fast. So neighbors are arguing this is just not the safest place to send homeless people. The city says they will have transportation for people staying here, and that the reason they chose this site was because of its size. It's big enough for dozens of RVs to park. But neighbors, they're just not sold.
Our biggest fear is that people that are brought here to receive shelter will feel disconnected and uncared for, because it's just look around. This is not an area where you're feeling like you're included. You're feeling like you're being put out of sight and out of mind.
Now today, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, he took the opportunity to drum up some support, or try to at least, for the city and county agreement when it comes to the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Now remember, 3 city commissioners have indicated they want to pull out of that agreement, stop sending the county $30 million a year, because they argue they're just unimpressed with how the county's been responding to homelessness. But all along, Mayor Ted Wheeler has been saying it is important for the city to stay in that agreement. And today he said this site was an example as to why.
Finally, I want to acknowledge our partners at Multnomah County who will help connect guests at this site and other city shelter sites with services as well as the all-important navigation to housing. The city and the county each have distinct responsibilities in our response to the homeless crisis. The ongoing partnership between the City of Portland and Multnomah County is critical to the success of our city's shelter sites.
All right, well, we'll wait and see what happens with the agreement in the weeks to come. Thanks, Blair. Now let's jump into our political coverage tonight. Plenty to get to, but we wanted to update you on voter turnout thus far for the upcoming election. This is something we plan to do each day now leading up to Tuesday next week. This is the most recent data from the Secretary of State's office, which is updated daily. Statewide, nearly 1 in 5 Oregonians have already submitted their ballots, turnout sitting at just under 19%. If we look at which counties are outperforming the rest from a percentage standpoint, it's mostly rural areas with fewer registered voters. Only 3 of the 36 counties are above 30% turnout so far. That's Wheeler, Wallowa, and Curry County. Congratulations. Yamhill and Umatilla counties are at the other end, the bottom of the turnout list, with just over 11% of ballots returned so far. Here's a look at the metro area, the most populated parts of the state. Clackamas County, just over 13%. Multnomah County isn't too far ahead, 14.7%. And Washington County, a few ticks higher at 17.3%. Now to a story here at home that's getting national attention. Ballot boxes in Vancouver and Portland set on fire early this morning. Investigators believe the cases are connected. Hundreds of ballots in Vancouver were damaged or destroyed, but here in Portland only 3 ballots were affected, and officials were able to identify those voters. Now, why the vastly different outcomes, you wonder? We did too. We looked into it. Turns out there's a fire suppressant canister inside these drop boxes. The one in Portland worked. The one in Vancouver did not. Investigators not sure why it failed and say it was installed earlier this year. Here's a look at surveillance photos of the person that police believe is responsible, driving a dark-colored Volvo. They say the person used an incendiary device to pierce through the box and start a fire inside. That technique was used in both instances this morning, as well as a third time earlier this month at a different drop box in Vancouver.
You know, it's heartbreaking. It is a direct attack on democracy. Yeah, shouldn't happen. It's interfering with people's vote is un-American.
Why anyone would destroy someone's votes, their voices, is beyond me.
The damaged ballot boxes have now been replaced. There will be increased police patrols in all 22 drop box locations in Clark County moving forward, and elections workers will now be ballot box observers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the last few years, working elections has become surprisingly a perilous job. So much so that 2 years ago, Oregon lawmakers passed a new law requiring harsher penalties for violence against election workers. And last year, Oregon Secretary of State Lavon Griffin-Valade told state lawmakers that county clerks were leaving the job in droves.
Over the last few years, almost 34% of Oregon's county clerks have retired and left their jobs, which is 12 experienced clerks gone. This is a huge loss of experience and knowledge. When we ask why they're leaving, many cite the same things: threats, abuse, and harassment, largely stemming from the false belief that the 2020 election was stolen.
Secretary of State's office told us last week that they're facing issues this election season as well. One incident came amid backlash over former President Trump not being included in the Oregon voters pamphlet. We've gone over this before, but to remind you, the Trump campaign chose not to appear in the voters pamphlet. It was their choice, not some kind of a state-sponsored election interference. Trump does appear on the ballot in Oregon, though, so you can still vote for him if you want. But that did not stop online conspiracy theorists from running with it and calling the Secretary of State to tell her how they feel. Here's part of a voicemail that someone left. You'll see why we're not letting it all play out.
I hope she fucking burns in hell. And I hope she gets publicly hung for treason. I hope she dies publicly by the people, for taking Trump and Vance off the ballot.
Again, that's false. That did not happen. Trump and Vance are on the ballot in Oregon. But you get the picture. The Secretary of State's office tells us that they've had a high volume of calls, social media posts, and emails harassing election workers this year, including some that threaten violence. And just like last year, they say the threats are coming from people who falsely believe the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. Independent research has some insight into that belief. A Pew Research poll released over the weekend shows that Trump voters are far more skeptical of elections than Harris supporters. The poll included more than 4,000 people nationwide between September and October. About 90% of Kamala Harris supporters believe the election will be run well, but only 57% of Trump supporters agree. Pew broke it down even further to dig into exactly what people are thinking when asked, will elections be run well? 93% of Harris supporters think in-person ballots will be counted as voters intended, compared to 77% of Trump voters. And as for mail-in ballots, oh boy, the gap does get much wider. 85% of Harris supporters think it's going to be fine, but only 38% of Trump supporters feel that way. In Clackamas County last week, an organized group showed up to the Board of Commissioners meeting claiming that Oregon's election system has widespread problems that led to big inaccuracies in the 2022 election. The group is called United Sovereign Americans, and at least 12 of them showed up to Thursday's board meeting. They took turns reading prepared documents that claimed a citizen's audit showed errors in the 2022 election.
An open source audit of the Oregon 2022 general election conducted by Oregon State citizens has uncovered evidence of massive inaccuracies that violate both federal and state laws, including 97,552 ineligible or uncertain registration violations found within the Oregon State voter roll database. 71,589 votes cast by ineligible or uncertain registrants, 20,104 more votes counted than voters who voted in the 22 general election. No one knows who cast them.
They went on to tell stories about getting someone else's election mail or ballots for people who had moved out of state. Now, the Oregon Secretary of State's office says the group's claims are not credible and that citizens' audits are based on static data that conflates out-of-date information with inaccuracies. They told us Oregon conducts a robust program to remove voters who are ineligible from the list of active voters. This includes a robust system of data sharing with other states. These updates are performed continuously throughout the year. This process ensures that when ballots are mailed, they go to a complete and accurate list. After hearing the testimony from the group last week, some on the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners seemed somewhat open to their concerns. Chair Tootie Smith, who's up for re-election, says she wants to fact-check the claims, but she believes, there could be problems.
For about every example that you brought forward, I have either experienced that in my personal life or with friends I know.
And Commissioner Mark Scholl said he wants to address it immediately by taking up a resolution. The group proposed calling for a legally valid election and an outside audit of Oregon's voter rolls.
It needs to be done before 5 November, not just for the Clackamas County, but for Clackamas County to send a signal to the entire state. Wake up, take action, listen to the people from...
Commissioner Ben West seconded the idea so the board could start talking about it soon, but they're on recess until November 7th, so Commissioner Scholl's not going to get his way before the election. And it's a resolution, not an ordinance. That means it's not necessarily strongly enforced. Commissioners did warn the group to stay peaceful, though, and not to cause harm to election workers. Instead, they encouraged them to volunteer to be part of the election process. Up next on the story, a break from politics to highlight some of your thoughts on another hot topic, downtown Portland. A new poll showed that hope is perhaps on the horizon. We'll share whether or not our viewers agree. And later on, we're digging for old on this rainy Monday night, finding some election-related treasures in the archives of the Oregon Historical Society. Stay with us. The story returns right after this. Hey, let's get to some of your feedback on a story that we brought you Friday regarding the direction that Portland is currently heading, as well as perceptions about downtown Portland. We heard from the reporter who wrote this article for the Oregonian, which analyzed new polling data on a sample of 600 Metro residents, half of which live in Portland. The numbers were not pretty, but perhaps a little bit encouraging and trending up. In 2022, only 9% of those polled thought the Portland area was heading in the right direction. That number is now up to 27%. So, yeah, progress. And when it comes to perceptions of the downtown area, 75% have a negative view, but that is down from 78% back in April. And if you dig deeper, more than half of those polled back in April, 51% had a very negative impression of downtown. That's dropped now to 38%, so better, but, still not great. We asked for your thoughts on downtown and where things are headed in the Rose City, and as always, you had plenty to say.
I have definitely seen an increase in business night activity down there as far as the good things. My wife and I go downtown once a month to have dinner or cocktails or just move around or shop, just to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Yes, it's much better than it was 2 years ago, and I highly recommend those people who do not believe it is to go down and experience it for themselves.
Thank you for that feedback. Jim wrote in to tell us, I belong to an informal group of guys, geezers, who meet daily for coffee and a walk at various places around Portland and Vancouver. At least once every 2 weeks, we meet in Northwest Portland and walk down to and along the Willamette River. In the last 2 years, I've seen a significant decrease in the number of homeless and illegal camping in inner Northwest Portland, so I would agree that things are looking up for Portland. But there were also several people who say they don't think much is changing, like this viewer named Will.
You don't really have great scenes in downtown still. I mean, you can go near Southwest 13th, around Morrison, Taylor, and right near the Portland Clinic there, and see a massive line of fentanyl zombies. And, it's just common sight to see, drugged out people all over downtown.
All right, so some improvement, but clearly a lot of work left. Thanks, Will. Thanks for your comments, everyone. And if you have additional thoughts, you know the drill. Email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Coming up next on The Story, we're digging for what we were able to uncover in the Oregon Historical Society's archives when it comes to voting. Why a silver cup from the Rose Festival more than a century ago is included. We'll explain when The Story returns. Tonight's Digging for Old drew inspiration from this time of year, election season. And I know you're sick of the ads during every commercial break, but we're in the home stretch now, so hang in there, not much longer. I can hear the hot tub and car sales ads already revving up. That'll be sweet relief, won't it? Back to our segment. We checked the Oregon Historical Society's archives for anything ballot related, and we were not disappointed. We'll start with this, especially timely considering the news of the day regarding ballot boxes. That's exactly what this is. It's a Portland ballot box. It's not clear just what year it's from, sometime in the 20th century. You can see the ballots were protected literally under lock and key, but can you spot the second layer of security there? There's 3 wax seals right along the lid in the front, presumably to know whether or not the ballots had been tampered with before they were counted. That's what those red things are there. Election security is nothing new, just a bit more advanced nowadays than using the wax. Coming up next, an example of a voting barrier here in Oregon from a century ago. A box of voter literacy test cards. No kidding. This was used in the 1920s because of Measure 1 on the 1924 Oregon ballot, the Oregon Voters Literacy Requirement Amendment, which passed with nearly 80% of the statewide vote. It meant in order to vote, you needed to prove that you could read and write English. And these 100 cards were how they tested people. And now this small sterling silver loving cup from the summer of 1912. What's that have to do with voting? Well, it was presented to Abigail Scott Dunaway by the Portland Rose Festival organizers, first prize for the horse and vehicle parade. Dunaway was instrumental in helping get women the right to vote and was encouraged by her mentor, someone you may have heard of, Susan B. Anthony. It was not easy road, though, to get the women's vote here in Oregon. Oregonians defeated efforts for women's suffrage more times than any other state. Dunaway witnessed all 5 losses in 1884, 1900, 1906, 1908, and 1910. This is the petition to the state in 1906 that came up short. Here's an example of a political ad of the times back then. This book contains all the reasons why women should not have the ballot. Someone would then open the book to find all the pages intentionally blank because, yeah, women should vote. But it did not happen here until 1912. In fact, the Historical Society has a Multnomah County ballot from that election. And if we zoom in really close to the middle left of the ballot, there we have it. Proposed by initiative petition equal suffrage amendment extending the right of suffrage to women, yes or no. By the way, it narrowly passed after its previous 5 failures with just 52% of the vote. How about that? And that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our story, that never ends. It goes on and on. For those of you watching live on TV, Straight Talk with Laurel Porter is coming your way next. And for the rest of you watching online, live or later, remember you can always stream the story on your own schedule. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV, or catch us anytime on the KGW YouTube channel. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.